of the power of no is getting around this feeling of guilt. So a lot of times when I'm coaching clients, different topics, different areas, we always somehow get into boundaries, we get into the word no, and it is amazing the level of guilt people feel when they say no, like almost to the point that they feel compelled to go back to that person and say, okay, I'm so sorry, like I'll do it. Now keep in mind, right? Again, if we create the conditions by which people treat us, then we have to be mindful around the example that we're setting up when people don't respect our boundaries. I get it. Like, we don't want people, I like to believe for the most part, we want people to be happy with us. We want people to feel that we care about them and that we support them and that we value them, right? But if you're saying yes to your own detriment, you're really not doing them service, and you're definitely not doing yourself service, right? But I have seen so many circumstances where people will say no and they spend more time worrying, stressing, actually feeling nauseous at having said no because the guilt is so deep. And so again, part of this is to help work through. Like, you need to think about, what are you feeling guilty? Are you feeling guilty about that you're not able to show up for someone? Are you feeling guilty because maybe that person looked disappointed that you didn't make themselves available? Maybe somebody told you straight up, like, how could you not be there for me? I get it. I could totally understand why you would feel guilty, but I hope that in the relationship, the friendships, whatever this looks like where you say no, that they understand that the only reason you would say no was because that you now need to take care of yourself, right? That hopefully you've demonstrated that while you value these individuals, you value this person, that you also fundamentally value yourself. And so the only reason you're saying no, or one of the main reasons you're saying no, is because you need to protect your peace, that you're overwhelmed, right? Like, there's many reasons. We should not have to feel like after we've said no, that, as I said, we go down the laundry list. Like, okay, like I know I'm saying no this time, but like the next 7 times that you ask me something, I promise I'm going to say yes. I have heard people negotiate that. I've actually had a client once say to me, okay, Aisha, is it okay if I say no once, but then I say yes like 4 more times? And then I'll say no. And I'm thinking, what if the 4 times that someone asks you something, you say yes? It's wild. Like, what if it definitely is something that's dangerous to you, that because you felt so guilty about saying no the first time, you're now going to put yourself in a predicament or in a situation that actually is a detriment to you, but because you felt so guilty about saying no the first time, you're going to say yes the next 4? I was like, absolutely not. As a coach, I don't tell people what to do, but in that circumstance, I was like, you're absolutely not doing that. That is a setup for disaster. And you really aren't protecting your peace. You're absolutely not protecting your peace. If anything, you're just telling someone, wait to the 5th incident or the 5th ask, they'll say no. And then the next 4, you're going to say yes, right? It doesn't serve you. But I actually had a client try to negotiate so that she didn't feel guilty about saying no. And we had to really work through that, right? We had to work through, again, the importance of making sure that they understood that the reason why you're likely saying no is because you need time or space to do something that is more important. And I'm going to say it, yeah, sometimes the things that I need to do for myself far exceed what I need to do for other people. Facts, right? Again, this might not be a popular opinion, but sometimes the things I need to do for myself supersede what my children need, right? I also feel like I have a responsibility as a mother, as a mentor, to also set that example that they themselves don't find themselves always readily available to everyone and anyone, when someone needs them. No, they have to also learn to establish boundaries. They have to be able to check in with themselves and know when they're overexerting or doing more than they should be doing without guilt. So yeah, there are many times, while it's to the chagrin of probably the people in my life, my kids, my partner, my mother-in-law, my parents, but I will say straight up, no. I will always say it with respect. I will say it with kindness, but I say it as a no, and that's it, like full stop. But again, unlike Beyonce, I did not wake up like this. It is taking me a long time, and having experienced burnout and being someone who always said yes to someone who's very comfortable with the word no. Because if you know me, you know that when I am in a space to show up, I'm going to show up probably with more energy than you. I'm the one that's like, oh, you said yes? Now I'm really saying yes, right? But that comes with, again, getting comfortable with the word no, protecting my peace, getting comfortable or with, saying no without guilt. And so when we're setting boundaries or saying no without guilt, right? We want to be able, there's a way to do it, right? That, again, isn't a perfect science when it comes to removing guilt. But you can say, no, thank you. I have another commitment. But thank you very much for reaching out. If there's future opportunities, I will, I'll absolutely explore. So don't also overcommit. Don't say, no, thank you. But I promise the next time you ask me, I'll say yes. No, because maybe the next time you ask or they ask, you can't do it. Right? But you can be gracious. Please be gracious, right? If someone says, are you able to help me move? You can say, no, I'm not able to do that this time. I'm sorry. But, please, if there's another, if you need support, don't hesitate to reach out. And if I'm not busy, I'll be more than happy to support you. Like you can find the happy medium. This is a bit of a process. You don't need to say no out the gate, get off the phone and then be sick. You can, if you feel like you need to give a reason why. I'm definitely not saying that people don't or shouldn't get a follow-up as to why you said no. Do what feels right. All I'm simply saying is that we will sometimes find ourselves, because of guilt, like over explaining why we can't be there and then committing ourselves to the next yes without knowing what's happening in the future. So that's really what I'm focused on, right? Keep it short. Keep it short. Again, we might feel compelled to offer. So like I'm saying no because like at 1:00 I got to do lunch, and then at 3:00 I got to get my hair done, and then at 4:00 I got to pick up my son, and I would have been able to go, but because don't do all that. Right? Don't do all that. The answer is no. Right now, my day is full. I'd love to be there for you, but right now I don't have the capacity to do so. Done. Right? Don't over explain. Keep it short. Sometimes this is, offer an alternative, right? Like maybe you can't do it today. So here's another great thing when it comes to no. No can be full stop, depending on where you are, or no can present an opportunity for another option. Right? No, I can't do it on Thursday. If it is something that you want to do, if you do want to support someone, if you do want to offer help, no, I can't do it on Tuesday, but is it possible to happen on Thursday? They might say yes, they might say no, to which you then say, okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm not able to make it. Right? That's okay. Depending on what the situation is, you can also negotiate, right? That's totally fine. I think another one when it comes to releasing, again, this guilt around establishing this boundary and around saying no, is that, and this is a good one, and I wrote it down, so I'm going to read it. Remind yourself that you are not responsible for other people's reactions to your boundaries, because this is another part of no. We will also explain to others where we are feeling guilty and uncomfortable why we've established this boundary, right? So it looks like this. No. And the reason why is because like I was always someone that said yes, and I need to, make sure that I'm taking time for myself. Why? If other people have a reaction to your no, okay. I mean, short of them trying to cuss you out, if they're like, oh, yeah, say sorry and keep it moving, right? But that small after reaction is where we sometimes find ourselves needing to over explain. Hear me again. We are not responsible for other people's reaction to us establishing boundaries. The only thing people need to understand is that you have a boundary and that it needs to be respected and that you are prepared to hold fort to that boundary, full stop. There's nothing else that's left to be said, right? And saying no to someone certainly might be disappointing, but I want you to think about what's this balance? Would I rather disappoint them or would I rather disappoint myself? That's what it ultimately comes down to, right? And again, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, perhaps, because we're not conditioned this way. I think, in the case of women, and I'm going to say in the case of Black women, we are definitely often conditioned to be very selfless, to make sure that we show up for people, because that is a demonstration of our love and our commitment to our family and our friends. But to what and at what cost? Right? What are the things, where have you found yourself in a situation where you are drained, you are resentful, where you are overwhelmed by having said yes all the time, right? And think about how you've shown up in those spaces. Probably not the best version of yourself, right? Because living with audacity is ultimately showing up as the best version of yourself. And when you're pushing those boundaries, when you're not respecting what your limits are, I can guarantee you, even if you think you're hiding it, even if you think you're doing the best job possible, believe me, the body lets people know that you are in a space and place that isn't your best self, right? So I get it. We don't want people to be disappointed, but you look at yourself in the mirror first, right? You have to be able to know that you've made decisions that were in your best interest. And you know what's something that I've come to realize? That when you make the best decision in your best interest, then the decisions that you make for others always, like, it's such a hard way to explain, but like when you make the right decision for yourself, the way in which you now show up is truly in its best place, right? Because I'm not operating from bitterness. I'm not operating from resentment. I'm not operating from being overwhelmed. I've made a good decision for myself and know I'm in a great place. And so when I show up in these places, when I'm here to do things for people, when I'm here to, support, it is with 100% high vibration, right? But that requires, again, today's topic, that requires getting comfortable with the power of no. And so guilt, we have to think about, is often a signal that you're unlearning an old condition, right? That's a big one. That if we've said no and we're feeling that gut feeling that's like, ooh, it means that we're actually doing the work, particularly if we've always been someone who has said yes. So don't see that guilt, don't see that like gut feeling as necessarily something bad. It could be that, think about anything you've done new, right? That you're nervous, you feel uneasy. It means that you might be doing, again, the important work of unlearning conditions that have traditionally been, how you've operated, and now you're pivoting in a different direction, but in the right direction, particularly as you continue to live your life with audacity. When you say no and when to say yes. So listen, as I said, this is not a podcast where I'm just out here telling everybody say no all the time. No. Obviously say yes. Like if there's things that you want to do, you want to show up for people in your life, there's a path that you want to take, of course say yes, right? But there's a time and a place, and really there's no perfect sense. So I can't say, well, you say no to this and you say yes to that. No, that's not for me to say, because this is a personal decision. But your body and your mind tell you when you are doing something that you should be doing and when you're doing something that you should not be doing. The mind, the body will tell you when the word no needs to be the first word that you say and when the word yes needs to be the first word that you say, right? That's a personal experience based on lived experience, based on knowledge, based on information, like all of those things. So I'm not going to tell you, there's no perfect science to that. But some of the fundamental pieces are, again, we will often say no to things that don't align with our values and our beliefs, right? Where we know we're doing something or engaged in something that really doesn't sit well with us. If it's something that we know is going to bring us stress, then you probably should be saying no, right? If we say, we should be saying no when we are at risk of sacrificing something, right? Again, an emotion, a feeling, a situation that isn't going to benefit us. If we're sacrificing ourselves in the name of this yes, it probably should be a no, right? And of course, yes is the opposite. If there's no detriment, if there's no discomfort, if there's no misalignment, and we have the time and the capacity or the money or the desire to do so, yeah, man, say yes. Say yes, right? But you have to be mindful around what saying yes is doing and also what no is doing, right? But in particular, what yes is doing. Another topic that I think is also important is the ripple effect of no. So this is more connected to those who, again, are people pleasers. I am a past people pleaser. Hi, my name is Aisha, and I'm a past people pleaser. And I can remember the first few times that I said no, and people's reaction to me, like literally, like, what do you mean no? And feeling such a level of fear, like I'm talking sweating, feeling nauseous, wanting all the things I talked about in this podcast today, wanting to go back or negotiate, like, okay, I know I said no, but like I'll say yes the next 6 times. Or what I would do, if I said no, what I would do is overcompensate by doing something that somebody didn't ask me to do as a demonstrate, like almost like a peace offering, right? So if I said no to this event per se, then next thing you know, I'm over here planning an event for them. They didn't ask me, but because I felt so bad, because I felt like I had disappointed, because there was a reaction that made me feel like they felt a type of way, then I would go above and beyond. Again, it caused burnout. What it caused is inequity in relationships. What it caused was people feeling a level of expectation and assumption that I would always go above and beyond because I created that condition. There was a ripple effect. So when I had to undo that, you better believe there was a ripple effect. Now, there isn't a ripple effect now, and some of those people who I was always the yes person to are no longer in my life. And part of that is, again, my fault because I created a condition and the expectation that I would always make myself available. But it is what it is, right? Life has taught me many lessons. And one of those lessons is be authentic. That is like the paramount. Be authentic. Because I wasn't being authentic. I was being what everyone needed me to be. And it created a lot of havoc. It created stress. It created feelings of being overwhelmed and showing up in places. I remember this was a work situation where I, at work again, was trying to assert myself or trying to demonstrate how great I was and said yes and yes and yes and yes and yes and yes and yes till I had enough, and said yes to a project that I did from start to finish, went above and beyond. And when it came time to giving accolades to the achievement, to the success of this project, I was not named. I was not named. I was mad. I was furious. And so at the end of that event where I wasn't named, where there was no acknowledgement, I sat in a room with, other leaders as they talked about the project and all those things. And my actual, I can remember how I was sitting. I could remember I was just sitting and one of my colleagues, who I'm still friends with, pulled me aside and said, Aisha, you have a right to be upset, but I also need you to think about how you created this. Now, she was saying it, the way I'm saying it is probably like, why would somebody say that? But I understood what she said. I made myself so available. I sought nothing from them. I established no boundaries. I created no rules of engagement. I didn't create a condition of which they needed to value me. And it wasn't about the open declaration of what I'd done, but I created the condition. And so I had to shut up about it, right? But my reaction said otherwise. And so that was a really powerful lesson for me because I said yes in that whole circumstance out of guilt. I said yes because I wanted, again, other people to see how great I was because other people's value of me meant more than my own value of myself. I didn't have boundaries. And so that's what happened, right? Really, why would they have thanked me when I just laid everything out like a silver platter, demanding or requesting no level of engagement or value, right? So I've been on the other side where I created the conditions by which people treated me and it didn't feel good. And so when I got to a place where now I'm changing that narrative, where I'm reframing no, where I'm getting comfortable with the word no, where I am saying no, there was a legit reaction to the point that some people didn't talk to me at work. I mean, it is what it is. Again, this version of Aisha is like, you don't want to talk to me because you don't want to talk to me. That's fine. But that was a hard transition for me, but it was a really powerful lesson that I am grateful for, and also grateful to my girlfriend who pulled me up and checked me in that way, right? Again, I want to remind you that your yes has value. Because your time has value, your yes has value, right? And so when you're showing up into these places, what you're telling people is like, I'm taking time out of my time, which I'm doing out of generosity, which I'm doing because I want to, right? And so value that, right? Value my time, value this, the opportunity or the time that I'm giving you. Again, this doesn't mean that people need to give you roses and roll out the red carpet because you showed up for them. I just simply mean that we have to reframe this understanding about our time and the ways in which we're showing up. And that, again, the reasons why we're saying no is because I am not in a place or space to show up the way that I desire to show up, right? A really important lesson. And when we talk about the ripple effect, again, right? Your no isn't just for you. It really is, as I share with you, it's a lesson for the people around you about the boundaries that you have. It's a lesson to teach, maybe your children or your spouse or your parents, or right? It is okay to say no, and that people will have a natural reaction to that, but you have no control over it. And again, it can be difficult, but again, I want you to think about the times in your life where you've said yes and it has truly been to your detriment. You might be watching this podcast and thinking, I am actively in a situation where I've said yes and there's no part of me that wants to do this. Can I tell you another little secret? If you've said yes, you're still allowed to say no. You're still allowed to say no. Now, let me offer this caveat. You need to weigh the pros and cons of saying no, right? So again, don't make any impulse decisions, but I want us to understand we've created choice in our life. And if we haven't made the right choice because, again, we felt pressured, because we felt guilty, because we felt discomfort, that you always have the choice to change. Now, will it cause anger? Maybe. Will it cause, difficulty for people? Maybe. But, and again, this is an unpopular opinion. As someone who helps people understand the fundamental importance of self and self-care, sometimes we actively need to put ourselves first, which means that you're going to change the balance and now put someone secondary where you maybe originally put them first. It doesn't make it easy. It can make things really difficult. But again, sometimes we need to put ourselves first. Many times we need to put ourselves first, right? So if you've said yes to something and your body and your mind are telling you otherwise, and there's time, if you've said yes to a vacation and you're on a plane, I don't know that you can say no. Maybe you can, but you might have 900 other passengers who are out here trying to hurt you. But you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? That because you've said committed to something, it doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity to say no, especially if you shouldn't have said yes to begin with, right? The power of no, again, is a fundamental piece of living with audacity, right? Because it allows us to know where our boundaries are. It allows us to dig deeper and really understand what are the boundaries that we need to establish. Where are we pushing ourselves beyond a limit that we shouldn't, where we're now not showing up as our audacious self, but actually showing up as a version of ourselves that we're working to avoid, right? The power of no holds much significance, and the power of no can be and should be in many circumstances a full stop sentence. Okay. Let's not feel compelled. Let's not feel the requirement to always offer the extra explanation, because sometimes in that extra explanation, you don't make sense, right? Because you tied yourself up so much. So just be mindful of that. I hope, as I said, what I share in these podcasts is not a perfect science. What I hope always, as I impart these gems, that it just offers a different perspective, right? That it offers an opportunity to think about the ways in which you're showing up in life, that you have the opportunity and that you understand that what is today, the behaviors, the actions that you take today are not permanent state, right? We didn't get to this point from 0 to, again, in my case, 46, almost 46. I didn't get to this place. Opened a lot of doors, closed a lot of doors, had a lot of doors slammed, right? But at the end of the day, where you're at today, where there are areas that you need to work on, can evolve. And that I do hope, in this podcast that you're just taking these little gems and applying them where they make sense. And as we wrap up today's episode, which I do hope you enjoy because I always love this conversation. This is a big one for me. That might be my next tattoo. Just a big giant no. My husband would probably lose it. He thinks I have enough. Oh, sorry. Just getting back. You see this? Remember I told you the last episode, unapologetically moi? Right there. Along with the guns. Look at this. Anyways. But I told you, I did it with intention. I did that about 5 years ago. And I meant it wholeheartedly. But, again, as we, bring this to a close, I want us to understand the power of no, right? The power of no is not about bringing harm or hardship or sadness to others. It really is about preserving ourselves. It really is about living audaciously. It's a statement of self-respect, of clarity and intention. And it is a true act of self-love. Our ability to say no lets people know that we value ourselves, that we have boundaries, that where we are in a place and space where we need to protect our peace, that we are prepared to do so. Remember, saying no isn't about anybody else, right? I realize that people will react to us in a way where it feels like it's about them, but it really isn't. It's about us, right? It's about knowing what we need at the time, whether that's peace, whether that's quiet, whether that's space, whatever that looks like. Saying no, again, is the act of self-love. And it's an act of self-respect, clarity, and intention. Okay. As always, I love to hear from you. Put in the comments, like, are you someone who's comfortable with saying no? Or are you someone who avoids the word no at all costs? Like maybe you even avoid the conversation so that you don't have to say no. Shoot me a message. Tag me on Instagram at me2moi.health. Send a comment in, on YouTube after you've watched that podcast. Where are you at on the scale of no? Are you like someone who is 100% comfortable with it and you employ it every way that you can? Are you at the middle stage where, you'll say no, but there's still levels of discomfort or guilt that come from it? Or are you like, I would rather avoid people rather than say no because there's such a level of discomfort with it? I would love to share. Let me know your thoughts. Also, again, in the DMs, let me know what are topics. I have topics in mind. I have topics upon topics upon topics as it pertains to what it means to live with audacity, which I'm going to continue to share with you. But if there's things that you want me to touch on, if there's something from a past podcast that you heard or you saw, you're like, Aisha, I would love for you to dig deeper, hit a girl up. I'm here. I'm here to share all the gems as you continue your journey of living with audacity. I want to thank you for joining me. Make sure you subscribe, share with your friends, like, comment, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Living with Audacity. Have an incredible week.